The Forsaken are a bit of an odd addition to the Horde, all things considered, at least looking at the Horde of Warcraft 3 and a vanilla World of Warcraft. Three honorable races bound by their mutual cooperation, their cultural similarities and their honor-bound society, along with a race of ruthless zombies bent on vengeance. And while we don't quite know a lot of the details of how they joined the Horde, this divide between the Eastern Kingdom's Horde and the Kalimdor Horde can be seen a little in-game, although the signs aren't that obvious. For example, Orc, Troll and Tauren characters, and later Goblins, started out with friendly reputation with each other but were neutral to the Forsaken and the Blood Elves, and vice versa. Now, why they joined the Horde is for practical reasons more than anything else, and those reasons are fairly obvious. The Forsaken needed some ally, any ally for that matter, in order to survive in their shaky position in Lordaeron, and the Horde benefited from having another large foothold in the Eastern Kingdoms. However, while the why of it is certainly important, alliances still have to be negotiated, and while we know fairly little of the specific negotiations going on between the Forsaken and the Horde, we do know that it was not at all an easy choice to admit them. Now, as far as we know, the Forsaken were the ones who approached the Horde first. They asked to be invited, the Horde wasn't the one who invited them. This happened after, as far as we know again, they were rejected on an individual level by the Alliance, who also took hostile action against them. Afterwards, we do know that there were very serious debates going on in the upper echelons of the Horde, with Warchief Thrall himself being undecided on the matter. Out of these debates, perhaps surprisingly, the Tauren were the biggest supporters of inviting the Forsaken. Specifically, two Tauren advocated for their entry the most, albeit for differing reasons. Those two Tauren were Archdruid Hamul Roamtotem and Magatha Grimtotem. Hamul, while fully aware of just how sinister the Forsaken could be, saw their potential to be redeemed and desired to help them with their condition. Magatha Grimtotem's motives are never stated out loud, but we can infer from the various quest lines in vanilla, which pointed to a connection between the Forsaken and the Grimtotem, that basically she was trying to gain both a political ally and a more secretive ally, so to say. We also know that the Earthen Ring, which at the time was a very influential part of the Horde, also supported the entry of the Forsaken, and were possibly actually the ones who convinced Cairn Bloodhoof to throw his support behind them. And it's very possible that the Earthen Ring was convinced by, once again, Magatha Grimtotem. The non-canon RPG books also state that, had it not been for the Earthen Ring's intervention, Thrall would have refused the Forsaken. Now, a debate cannot happen without an opposing side, and while we don't know exactly who or why opposed the entry of the undead, I do have a theory that I think is quite close to the truth. I believe that Vol'jin and the Darkspear tribe was opposed. Why?
I have never trusted you.
And besides that, we do know that the Darkspear trolls had a deep mistrust of the Forsaken, and while they were willing to work with them and within the Horde, they certainly did not feel happy about it. The reasons for this could be varied. Distrust of their methods, dislike of the undead in general, especially with what happened with Zalazane and his undead trolls, and with Vol'jin's personal loyalty to Bon Samdi, the lower of the actually stay dead, or perhaps racial hatred. Trolls, all types of trolls, almost instinctively hate humans and elves, and the feeling is very much mutual. Sylvanas especially has a very deep hatred of trolls, so much so that at least once she's even refused to employ them in her forces. And the Forsaken are composed almost entirely of undead humans and elves. And while Vol'jin has come to respect and work together effectively with the Blood Elves, he's never really been particularly happy about the Forsaken, to say the least. Vol'jin's interactions with Sylvanas were few and far between, and almost all of them were antagonistic. The only time they cooperated was during the battle for the Undercity, which was under orders from Thrall, and against Garrosh, someone who they both hated. But even after defeating Garrosh in the Siege of Orgrimmar, if you talk with the Horde faction leaders, Sylvanas is the only one who does not approve of Vol'jin becoming war chief. Now, going back a bit, the decision on whether to admit anyone into the Horde or not is entirely up to the war chief. While these debates were going on, even if, say, everyone involved wanted the Forsaken in, Thrall could have refused them, and we do know that the war chief had misgivings on the undead. Misgivings which were probably held by his experience fighting them in the Third War and by his friendship with Jaina Proudmoore, but in the end he listened to the arguments the Torm presented and to the spirits of the elements and let them in. More on the information on the Forsaken's entry into the Horde we do not know, and I don't think further speculation would really have a solid basis to stand upon. So, thank you everyone for watching, and I will see you all next time. Farewell.